13, and 17.
Could you do that again?
We have 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 17.
Alex?
Okay? On item 8, well, that's for next year. That's for next fiscal year. Okay, we need to explain it. Lynn, could you come up? Is there an issue on number 8 as far as the funding?
Councilman, we recommend that your committee may want to ask for a CAO report on this. The reason being is that I think that there's confusion between what was the understanding during the budget deliberations when the $300,000 in matching funds was provided. I believe the council's understanding at that point was that it was a one-for-one match, whereas it turns out it's really a two-for-one, where the city is paying $300,000 and the grant is $150,000. So I think it would be justified to have the CAO report back at your first meeting following the break.
Okay, so we would be set for this fiscal year, but it would be in dispute for next fiscal year?
The grant is $150,000 for 2 years.
Okay.
However, during the budget deliberations, the department said that in order to secure the grant, they needed the match for 2 years, which would have been, it's $300,000.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it was clear to the council that it was $150,000 for the 2 years.
Okay. Because what my understanding was is that, if I remember the discussion, that the $150 for the match was coming out of the general fund, but they had a Parks and Cultural Facilities Trust Fund that handled the other $150. So the general fund was being hit for 1-to-1, but they also had a Park and Cultural Facilities Fund that was going to cover the other part.
The advance from the the match from the city is actually $93,000 from the general fund, and the balance is from CIEP.
Okay. Is there a timeline on this?
Because he spent already 49.
The department's here. I can't really address that.
Do we have somebody from department just to advise? Is there a time problem on this?
Good afternoon, Saul Romo for the Department of Cultural Affairs. There is no time constraint in that. If the committee wanted to wait until after the recess to have a CAO report back, we could certainly wait for that.
Let's just hold this until you can clarify, so we can make sure we get the impact of what the Budget Committee intended. So we'll hold this item to the next meeting and get the needed information.
And the CAO will report back
CAO
at that
report
time.
at that time. So
Thank you.
item 8 will not be on consent. It will go to being held to the next meeting for that needed information. Okay, item 10, we will approve the CAO recommendations. Item 11, we concur with Public Safety and Personnel Committee recommendations to approve the CAO recommendations. Item 12, we approve the Office of Finance recommendations. Number 13, we approve the Office of Finance recommendation. Number 17,
We need to hear that.
you want to hear that instead of with the CAO and CLA recommendation?
Yeah, I'm confused about the,
Let's hold item 17 in the regular agenda. Okay, so consent, we're going to hold 8 for continuance. Consent would be 10, 11, 12, 13, and 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay? So now we will go, we do not have Mr. Cardenas here for the joint meeting. We have 4 items in closed session. What I'd like to do at this time is go to the closed session items. We have a number of cards on number 9. We'll take that out of order right after the joint meeting when Mr. Cardenas gets here. And we have items, cards on items, special items 18, special item, I'm sorry, item 15, which is on the regular agenda. We have one on items 1 and 2. So we'll get to those cards when we come back from closed session. Good afternoon. We're going to reconvene the regular meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee. We have to take item number 5, I believe, on open session. And from the discussion, we will move the city attorney's recommendation to adopt the precise language set forth in the city attorney report that meets the writ of mandate ordered by the court. So we can move item 5 with that direction. We'll take a recess on Budget and Finance regular meeting, and then we'll convene the joint meeting of Budget and Finance and ITGS to address items 1 and 2. Before we ask staff, Mr. Cardenas is here, the chair of ITGS. We have our quorum from Budget and Finance with Mr. Rosenthal, Mr. Smith, Mr. Weezarp, and Mrs. Gruhl, and myself. Let me ask if we could have the 2 cards that we have on file to come up before staff comes up. Jim McQuiston on items 1 and 2, and also Charles, is it Young, Department of General Services, on item 1.
Also, as chairman of the Information Technology and General Services Committee, we do have a quorum with the presence of myself, the chair, Tony Cardenas, and also member Bernard Parks.
Wait, Mr. McQuiston.
Jim McQuiston, you have my statement. There are 2 things that I am eagerly awaiting here, one of which is let's move a little faster on this thing. I read that bit about, well, maybe we'll delay this till 2011. We just cannot stand that kind of a delay unless we want to really lower our bond rating, maybe to BAA. We've got to move a little faster on that. The other thing that I am worried about, practically everybody who has gone through a revision of their accounting system has run into big problems. LAUSD, the county, I don't know, you just name it. There is no reason why we should get into this, but if we don't have a safety net, we're really playing with fire. And as a defense contractor, I know that the Department of Defense always had a backup. We don't really need a backup hardware system, but we do need a backup that looks at the software system. If for God forbid there be a plane crash and all those people were killed, where would we be? We really need to have a little bit of coordination, maybe a secondary contractor that is only there to learn what's going on, because the city is not technically qualified, and if we do have that kind of thing, I'd feel a lot safer about this. Otherwise, let's get busy on it.
Let me ask Mr. McQuiston, you have another card. Is that on item 15?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Cardenas, you want to kick off number 1 and 2?
Okay. We'll be handling item number 1 of the joint committee. Have they announced it?
Yes. Item number 1 is the Financial Management System Advisory Oversight Committee report relative to request for approval to initiate the implementation of a new financial management system. And item number 2 is an FMS Advisory Oversight Committee report relative to the FMS project approach and contract negotiations. And there's staff here from Controller, ITA, and CAO to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
And CLA.
So, good afternoon, council members. Oh, time out.
I'm sorry, can you announce item 2 as well? We'll hold them both together.
Yes. Item number 2 is a FMS Advisory Oversight Committee report relative to the FMS project approach and contract negotiations.
Okay. Chairman Parks and Cardenas and council members, I'm going to be very brief. The experts are up here to answer more specific questions. I've talked with several of you individually. I just want to take the opportunity to thank every single city employee, and there's been well over 100 involved in bringing this forward today. They have done a fabulous job, and I know you've been waiting for this, so have I. It's taken about 4 years. Some of it was a process to make sure we were going to come forward with the right system. Some of it was spent in running the most impeccable process to make the decision to award the contract that's before you. Then we had changes in leadership inside the city. Then we've had financial problems that changed the project. But what's before you today has been very thoughtfully shaped and considered. It is essential to bring the city into the 21st century. It is a major important first step. And I want to thank all of you as well, because now you're becoming a key part of this team to move it forward, and we're asking some unusual things. This is a project that is going to change the way the city does its business operations, and part of implementing the project in the next 2 years is unprecedented from any way we've done projects before. And some of the things we're asking in the personnel packages, et cetera, are also different. But I'm thanking you in advance for your willingness to think out of the box, to look at doing things differently, and for supporting the team that has worked so hard from my office, from the CAO, the city attorney, the mayor's office, ITA, and every city department in this city. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to the experts and to your questions.
Hi, Randy Levin, General Manager, Chief Technology Officer for the city. You have before you 2 correspondence, 2 reports, both for the project to replace our city's financial systems. We're looking at doing this in 2 phases. The first phase will be the core financials, and then the second phase, we're going to determine the scope as we move forward. We have selected CGI as our technology partner. That would include the software that we're going to use from them, as well as use them as an implementer and an integrator for this effort. It's going to take us approximately 18 months to do, 18 to let's say 20 months to do this first phase, with a go-live projected in July of 2010. We're very excited that we're at this point, and we'd like to entertain any questions that you have on the project.
Ms. Levine, when was the request for proposal process for this?
The original request for
Yes.
proposal. Bill, can you help me with that? I wasn't here for the original.
They had cans and string.
They're bringing you a chair.
There was cans and string.
You might be a while.
Get a string upgrade.
This project's been a long time, so it's nice to be here. The original, the council approved the RFP in December of 2005. It was released in January of 2006.
And when was the first light shed on who would likely be the company that bid and was likely to be the one to do the work?
The proposals were received in March of 2006. We started the evaluation process. We went through basically a 4-phase project, and my recollection is November, the AOC approved proceeding with and negotiating with CGI.
Okay. Now, so since early 2006, this process has been ongoing. I think it's important for people who are want to know whether or not this is ready for this phase of approval. What has been going on since then? What kind of changes or what kind of negotiations, what kind of understanding do we have that we will be able to have ourselves in the appropriate position where we are doing our best to not find ourselves in a situation where we go from a potentially $51 or so million potential project into a $60 million, a $70 million, $100 million project, because there's too many examples where both private industry and government have found themselves in that situation.
Some of the activities that have been going on subsequent to that timeframe were negotiating with CGI, getting through the contract terms and conditions, which was a lengthy process. We did additional due diligence from an IT perspective. We wanted to try and take a look at what systems would be either eliminated or would need remediation as part of this process and fine-tune that list. We also took a really hard look at the scope to make sure that we had all components of the project included in the scope, and there were some additional items that we felt that we needed to add to make it more successful and be a system that could actually go into production and be supported. We also started to work on the personnel side of things. You know, how many people would it take to support this project, this system, once it goes into production? How can we get those people? How can we retain those people? And go through all of that, which, you know, a lot of these are normal startup activities for a project of this nature.
But when you say normal startup activities, and by my experience of being involved in, as a policymaker at the state level and the city level, looking at potential projects that are $50 million projects from their inception, one of the problems that isn't the norm is that the government doesn't tend to protect itself, and being able to have the language appropriately hold the private industry accountable when changes need to be made or when the costs start to overrun. One of the biggest problems is holding private industry accountable because they tend to claim that those changes aren't included in the original agreement. What have we done to make sure that we safeguard ourselves from that?
I think Bill and I are both going to answer that. I mean, we have gone through a pretty arduous exercise of identifying what we think are going to be customizations in the software. We've put together a pretty detailed project plan that will get more detailed once we start this to ensure that we have captured all of those tasks. I do want to say that one of the biggest reasons that these projects fail in government, and I've done a lot of research on this, is because of the lack of timely decisions being made. So an empowered project team is a key success item for the project. So, and in my opinion, this is a joint project. It's as much CGI as it is the city.
Now, on behalf of the city, who's going to be running point on what you just described as making timely decisions? Is that going to be the controller's office? Is that going to be the information technology department? Who?
We've set up a structure for the project where there's going to be a project oversight committee. I will be the chair of that, and Terry, CAO, CLA, Mayor's Office, Controller will all be on this committee. So any issues that come up that can't be resolved by the project manager will be escalated. The project manager will be on an administrative, for administrative purposes, be in the ITA department, and we'll have a direct line to me as well.
Do we have a name for that project manager right now?
No, we are interviewing, we are looking.
Okay, so we have identified a structure.
Correct.
But we don't have the particular individual who's going to be running point on behalf, it's on behalf of the IT department?
It's on behalf of the project.
Okay, on behalf of the project, but who is that person going to answer to, the controller or you?
They're going to answer to the project oversight committee, the 5-member committee that we put together.
Whose payroll is that person going to be on?
Mine, ITA.
See, that's
They will
what I'm
answer
getting
to me.
Okay. So they'll be interacting with this committee, but their direct day-to-day responsibilities are within the IT department. The reason why I'm spending time on this is
Correct.
because I think that that's been one of the biggest problems with government, is we've allowed non-technical departments to be the lead and the point on this. And the technical people in the outside world, the third party, run circles around our inside people because they're not technical. And then by the time we get our technical people engaged, we're already doubling the cost. And then we're starting to realize that perhaps we've convoluted ourselves into a position where maybe we have to actually consider starting over. Mm-hmm. Has that ever happened? I'm not saying happened here or with you. I'm saying, has that ever happened in the world of IT that you're aware of?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, what's the best way to safeguard ourselves from that? Is that the system you've put in place, that you've engineered to date on this particular project?
Yes, it's the project management structures that we've put in place, the reporting, the empowered project team, I think we have a close relationship with CGI, and we're going to be measuring them, on their deliverables and on progress, and we'll be managing the budget based on deliverables and progress as well. I mean, if we encounter an issue that really is, for whatever reason, extremely problematic, that will be escalated to a new committee that's being formed, the Technology Oversight Committee.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to that question?
I think the other thing is that the goal here is to change the way the city does business, to use the business processes and the capability that are built into the system. When we implemented FMIS, the current system, I'm one of the few people who was here.
How long ago was that, roughly?
1987, and I was in the CAO at the time.
Over 20 years ago.
Yes, I'm an old guy.
No, you're not. Don't say that.
My younger son is 25 today, so yes. So what we did is we wanted to do the same approach that we're taking today, but because of city needs, we developed a system that looked like the old system, so we couldn't take advantage of the upgrades. We don't want to replicate that mistake. We want to use the functionality that is in the system, the best functionality. We want to change the way the city does business, and the goals of this are different than other projects because of that. And I think also we have a new director of technology who's got experience in these systems, who looks at what needs to be done. So I think you take a look at the work that's been done, what our goals are, the people that are heading the project in Ms. Levin and the others. And I think we have all of the items in place to have a successful implementation.
Okay. Now, do you want to shed some light on our comfort level or non-comfort level when it comes to actual housing and facilities of the system? Is there anything that's loose-ended there? Are we comfortable and confident that we have the permanency of place for the system?
The hardware and the software, I think we're fine on. The facilities, I think we might need additional space on the Garland Building, 4th floor, which is the space that we've procured. We're going to work with CDD to see if there's a way that we could procure the rest of the space on that floor. I think we're going to need it. So
About how much space are we talking about? 2,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet?
square feet are they in?
Over.
They're in about 8 to 10. We're in about 25.
So you're at about 25,000 square feet right now? Mm-hmm. So long-term strategy is to make sure you secure an additional 8 to 10,000?
Yeah, we won't need it next week, so we'll need it probably in a few months.
Well, that leads to the next
6 months.
point of clarification. For full implementation, I know it's ongoing into decades, hopefully, the system, but as far as the transition of full implementation, how long do we expect that to be?
Well, the first phase will be in July of 2010. And then, while we...
Said July of 2010, you said?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the first phase. And then from there, we will certainly have a decision point to make whether or not we go forward with the second phase. So we will go into production and operationalize the first phase, and we'll determine whether or not we want to go forward with the second phase.
Okay. And the $51 million and change that is in our figures right now, that handles just which phases does that apply to?
That's the first phase. That's the general ledger, grants, project cost accounting, accounts receivable, accounts payable. It's the staffing to do the work. It's the agreement with CGI for the implementation. It's purchasing the software. It's purchasing the hardware. It's lease space. But the whole function is a new general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and grant project cost accounting.
Okay. So that's phase one.
Correct.
Okay. Any budget questions?
Let me just go through a couple of things, and I think we've discussed this in office meetings, but when could we expect our definition of what the TOT is going to perform so that we know that that system is in place for all major systems and what type of systems is going to overview?
The TOC, we're going to deliver you basically a straw man when you come back from recess the beginning in September for us to discuss.
Okay, so we'll get some policy wording?
We will, yeah. I want to stress, though, that the DOC actually already exists. The citywide email, for example, policy material and other stuff has been going through the TOC, which is my office, the mayor's office, and the CAO. So we're not changing that structure, but in terms of how the TOC is going to interface with the Project Oversight Committee that Ms. Levin was referring to, yes, you'll get a clear definition of that.
But in the future, will that definition will deal with other major systems that are proposed to come online, so it's clear what type of systems will come before the TOC?
The expectation is that core group of three people will meet, and we'll be talking about systems, citywide, and ITA, of course, is an ad hoc member of that as well, so that we can take opportunities to consolidate when other systems are in LAPD, for example, or city clerk, or wherever they may be, to do those most efficiently. So yeah, that'll be the central body that's working on all of these.
And let me ask Randy, where are we on the issue? Two issues that we have concerns about, and that's the knowledge transfer as we begin to develop it, and are we creating a proprietary system, or are we doing something that is off the shelf that can be upgraded as it gets older?
In terms of creating a proprietary system, no, CGI is an off-the-shelf package. We have identified potential customizations to it. We're going to try and make sure we limit those customizations as much as possible and change the city business processes to match the system as opposed to the other way around. It'll be harder on the city initially, but it'll be better for the city long term. We have talked to CGI at great length about knowledge transfer and the fact that it's very important for us to be able to run this system on our own. And we have worked in tandem with them, so we've developed a structure by which knowledge transfer will be occurring throughout the project, and it won't just be an event afterwards. So it's going to be a process by which we get educated by CGI throughout the project. Then they will be with us post-implementation to make sure that we can execute certain procedures, certain milestones after we go live to ensure that we can actually run this system on our own.
Okay. And then if we ever get to the point where we had in the past, we were going on an off-the-shelf system, and then it turned into a proprietary system, and I don't believe we were notified. We really need to, when that decision, if that comes about, that we get notified before that we get to that point.
One of the good things about CGI as a company is what they do is if there are certain modifications that they make that could benefit, other organizations, they actually will incorporate it into their release, into their next release. So I can't believe that we're so unique that we will need customizations that no one else could ever use. Then I'd have to question why we're doing what we're doing. So I think that we need to be very we need to go into this with our eyes wide open and really make some tough decisions when it comes to these things. And if we do need customizations, we need to talk to them about whether or not they will incorporate them into their core product and disclose that to this organization.
Okay. Very good. Jerry, let me ask on the Garland building. Mm-hmm. Now we move CDD out of Garland building?
Partially.
Okay. Now, was the expectation that we're going to be reducing some lease costs with that move, or does that cost go on now that we're filling the 20-some thousand square feet?
That cost will go on. I don't know that there was ever an expectation we would save money. I mean, we knew that CDD was shrinking, but we all knew that we were going to have to find space for the FMS project, and we were looking at various options. But it was expected that this space was going to be needed by FMIS.
But I mean, at some point in time, our goal is to move resources out of Garland to save that lease financing.
In the long term, the plan would be to move the Garland people, all of the Garland people, into Fig Plaza. That is a very long-term plan.
All right, thank you.
Just real quick, and I was briefed as well from the controller and ITA, Randy, as far as going, as well as the CLA, as part of this discussion. And I think that back and forth as to whether who should be ultimately control, and coming to the point that the technological experts on that, but that there still be that linkage with the controller's office that is so important, because they've been the day-to-day implementing. So I think the design in which you've created this gives that input, and would hope as the process goes along, if there's anything that suddenly says it does not have that partnership, which I'm assuming it will, that we should know that. And I think one of the issues that was concerning to me as we go forward was the departments responding sometimes to another department versus elected officials and the mayor and the mayor and all of that. And so again, I think that is critically important as into its implementation. The only way this is effective is if the general managers of those other departments actually respond and participate. And so those oversight committees are very important to ensure that in fact they're doing that. Did you want to add something, Bill?
Yeah, I think that there is more perceptual difference than difference in reality. I think ITA is very aware of the need for subject matter experts in the financial. I think the financial side, we're very aware that it is an IT project, and we need both. It's really a symbiotic project, and both of them. In fact, one of the things that Ms. Levin looked at when she went to the Garland building is that we need more space for subject matter experts as they come in, and that we're going to be heavily involved. Another thing that she picked up on is the organization chart in the project has a steering committee of general managers. So she's actively bringing general managers in. So I think that there's a recognition that it's both a very strong IT project and a very strong business process project.
Okay. I would hope, and maybe in the CLA, I don't know with all of the implementing documents, but that there be kind of a quarterly report or a more frequent report as to where we are. I know in Mr. Weezar's committee, when we talked about items and a department had not responded in the audit, he held it for the next week and said, those departments need to show up. That kind of intensity of not waiting, because it's going to go very quickly, and if we don't have them participate. So it may be that we should build into that reporting that they come to whatever, whether ITGS or whatever committee would be appropriate to ensure that they're on track. Because we'd hate for it to be 6 months later and say X department hasn't really been, and that sets the whole project back.
We will have scorecards for various activities that we're doing by department. That will be very evident, who's not doing their
Who's
share.
not playing? Okay.
Yeah, and we will not wait 6 months because time is money in this project, and so therefore, we'll have to figure out a way to make them successful and help them participate.
And my expectation is all of the bond oversight committees, for example, you get quarterly reports, whether it's QF, et cetera. I would anticipate this works exactly the same way, so there'd be standard quarterly reports talking about progress, but clearly if there are issues, and that's why the mayor in my office and the CAO or in the TOC, if there are interim issues, we have the ability to bring those forward right away and get those resolved.
Okay, that would be great. And I think on the staffing, just wanted to make sure that there's enough staffing to be able to do the job. You feel comfortable with that?
We will certainly let you know if for some reason we have understaffed a certain area.
Okay.
I just have a very broad, general question that I hope you could answer very concisely. And people are going to ask me, as they are other people who oversee this project, which is other major institutions who have undergone this change, such as LAUSD and the state university system, have had some major difficulties. What guarantees can you provide us that we won't have the same difficulties?
Well, just like they can never guarantee there's going to be an earthquake, I can't guarantee we won't have any problems. All I can tell you is after doing this for 22 years, I've been there and seen it all, and there are mechanisms that we can put in place to ensure that we are successful. I think, I don't want to go off about LAUSD, but there are some major reasons why they got into the situation that they got into, and we know in the IT community what those are, and we certainly won't be repeating those. So I think that, I have also, I'd say, grilled CGI, maybe, about their project management style and their deliverables and all of that. And I believe that we have probably the best team that we could get from CGI. And I think that the project management structure that we have defined will enable us to do the job that we need to do, but also provide the necessary oversight in addition to the necessary support to get the project done.
In terms of how we're funding this overall, what percentage of the money are we using from, let's say, sales of bonds or credit-type dollars versus real dollars that we have today? Is that
Well,
available?
some of that is yet to be determined. We have a bit over $7 million in general city purposes and $16 million in MICLA. Some of the hardware and some of the systems components would be eligible for MICLA and some will not. So how the breakdown of the funding is actually going to be sort of an evolving process. But at this juncture, we've got in place 23 million of the 51.
Okay. Can you provide that information to us, or estimates of how we're going to, what that money's going to be, the breakdown of that money in
Absolutely.
the future? Thanks.
Yeah, just a couple more questions, and I was fortunate to be brief like some of the rest of us were from the controller on a lot of those issues. So my last couple questions are, Ms. Levin, on the CGI contract, you talked about knowledge transferability. Do we have guarantees on that a certain percentage of the knowledge is going to be transferred so we can maintain these systems in-house?
I don't think we have percentages, but we have a plan.
So there's a roadmap to
Yes.
get us to that point? Okay,
Absolutely.
And to follow up on discussion, I think Mr. Weezer was getting to, too, is we've had a bad record here in the city of L.A. Before you got here, so it's not your fault, before you got here, of over-customizing systems. And we talked a little bit about that, but yet I see there, if I'm not mistaken, there's over 45 customizations in this already. And I know Jerry was here at the time, but we did this with the fire department when we customized it so well that it never worked. And after patch after patch after patch, rewrite after rewrite after rewrite, we ended up cutting out a big chunk of the system because we just couldn't get the thing to work after 2 years and millions of dollars. So I just want to make sure that 45 customizations seems like a lot to me, and that we haven't gone down that same path we did once before and build a Frankenstein monster that you can never fix.
Well, that certainly is not my objective. I think what's going to happen is that we're going to all be very united in trying to implement the system as vanilla as possible, and probably what you'll hear will be some noise from the departments unhappy with that, as opposed to the other way around. And so we will ask you for support, because we want to limit the amount of customizations, which means we're going to all have to change how we do what we do on a daily basis.
So we're going to change the system rather than the technology. We're going to change our system of doing things.
Yes.
Our habit, better choice of words, bad habits sometimes. And good luck with that with the police department. But, and then last thing, you talked about getting a project manager. Are you looking inside ITA, or are you looking globally to the marketplace for someone on this?
We're looking in the city, we're looking at the proprietaries, and we're looking outside.
Okay,
Looking
so we're looking
everywhere.
for the best person we get, no matter where we find them.
Correct.
And I'll give you bonus points if you can steal one from DWP for a change. That would be. Thank you very much.
And the only thing I'll add to that is I'm very impressed with your leadership in your department, and you know, what you've done internally signifies your management skills. When you did zero-based budgeting, you looked at every job and how it fits in with the mission. And giving you the responsibility to put this integration together was the right person, obviously. Can you give us report backs in a timely manner if there's any glitches that go along the way, or any issues that might have not been anticipated now, so we can deal with them in a more proactive way?
Yes, definitely.
Well, I applaud you for what you put together. Thank you.
When it comes to learning from other successes or other systems or mistakes, any status on what's going on with the county's financial management system? What relevancy we could learn from that or understand from that?
We
or-
actually, we have a lot of input from CGI, because they also did the implementation at the county, and we've talked to the county. So, and we've talked to some of their other customers, well, many of their customers, Orange County. So we've been learning what's worked and what hasn't worked, and we are trying to incorporate all that into our project plan.
Okay, all right.
Let me just ask, we called earlier Charles Young. Come on, you have a card on item 1 and 2?
Time to come up, Charles.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Charles Huang. I'm from the Department of General Services. And I'm a IT professional who provides services to financial operation for many years. I have serious concern about this financial management system project. I strongly recommend the honorable council members to delay the approval of this project. And because the cost of this $51 million project could easily swell to maybe several $100 million. So we got to ensure that the city of LA will get the result, the return that we deserve. Unfortunately, most likely we won't. Reason being that from the beginning, there was no clear business objective of this project except to replace an existing system. And also, when you always see those and the justification in the report, they are secondary considerations and they're so used to justify and then the replacement. There was no serious effort to explore more economical and more efficient alternatives. As a matter of fact, most of the problem associated with the FMIS and as cited in the report could be resolved more economically and efficiently using new technology, but there was no such a study and it has been conducted. Even if anybody has a doubt, I will invite you to the city, invite you to the Department of General Services. We could use the state-of-the-art technology to give internet age performance to the system probably as old as FMIS. So I believe that because if the city really want to spend the money, we really need to give more consideration or other possibilities. So I wish that honorable council member, so you would delay the approval, and you can direct the project managers go back to conduct more study. And then so because the city is in a dire financial situation, nobody has the right to throw away $100 million so easily.
We have to wrap it up now.
I have a question. Are you here on behalf of yourself or the department you work for?
I am on behalf of myself and the people with like mind.
Okay.
So I do not represent the department. This does not represent the view of the Department of General Services.
Okay.
And I am representing myself with experiences with the system integration for many years.
Okay. How long have you known that this process has been in place?
From the beginning. And so we saw this.
That you answered my question already. Now, my next question is, as the chairman of the IT and your department, General Services Department, I chair the committee that oversees both of those departments. I don't remember seeing you coming forward on this item. Since you've known about it from the beginning, why have you waited so long to you have the right to express your concerns as part of the public. Why have you waited so long to express these concerns?
We try to express our opinion in different meetings with the project manager. We told them that there are better alternatives in new technology and so should be explored. But our opinion apparently was ignored. So our opinion actually did not go through the channel and into the committee.
So you're saying that that's your personal opinion?
Well, of course, at this point, yes, because I do not represent the view of the Department of General Services. But I just want to so give my opinion and also give you the facts.
Now, you work on IT issues within the General Services
General Services, I work actually, and so I have been the project manager for the largest internal and development project for the city, and so we have in the suites of applications. We integrate different systems together successfully. Those projects could easily cost $1 million if it's done by outside contracting company, but we did it with negligible costs.
I understand it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me just ask, this item 1 and 2, as we said, has been in process in 2006. What I'd ask, as this item is progressing to the council, if I could ask Mr. Young to meet with the TOC, give them your ideas and views so that they can evaluate them in the process of the ongoing implementation of this system. And I'd ask we do that, and then we could have some verbal report back at the time it comes to council as far as
we will try, but it is scheduled on Wednesday for council.
Okay, very good.
So you better hurry.
Okay. All right, so the issue is that if we could just allow Mr. Young to get his comments before the TOC, I think that will help all of us resolve whatever his issues are. If I get a consensus of the committee here that we'll move items 1 and 2 from the Budget and Finance standpoint.
Yes, a recommendation from the ITGS committee is to approve the recommendations of the Advisory Oversight Committee on both items 1 and 2.
Okay, we'll move that item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all the items.
We're going to take a couple items out of order. We have a number of cards on item 9. Mr. Alacon is here. Come up and make your comments, then we'll have the community comment cards, and then we'll bring the staffs up.
Okay, next is item number 9, which is a joint CAO-CLA report relative to collection of unpaid extra capacity container fees in response to budget motion number 24. Energy and Environment Committee on July 15th took various actions. Ad hoc Renew Alley Committee on August 5th concurred.
Can we ask for
Energy
quiet,
and Environment
please?
Committee.
Thank you.
Want me to read it over again? All right. Thank you.
Good.
Well, item number 9 is a joint CAO-CLA report relative to collection of unpaid extra capacity container fees in response to budget motion 24.
Mr. Alacon?
Members, thank you. I think you're all very familiar with this item. This is related to an identified source of funding that previously was unidentified, and that was the uncollected extra capacity fees. Obviously, for several years, we have not taken advantage of a requirement to charge folks for their extra capacity on the black and green containers in sanitation. So I concur with the CAO's report relative to the amount that is anticipated to be collected moving forward from this point, since the council directed sanitation to start the process of collection for those people that were not being collected on. I concur with the CAO that the amount is likely to be around 8.5 million. The exact figure is yet to be known, but the reason I feel that way is because a survey conducted by the Bureau of Sanitation of the responses received, only 6% said that they would not be interested in continuing with the extra capacity container. A number of them have indicated that they didn't mind. I think it was about 80%, 82% did not respond whatsoever, and so it's likely that those funds would be received. I know the department is moving forward with the collection process, and so with regard to the CAO's reports on the amount of money to be collected, our original estimate was that 100% collection was about 11 million. I've always said that I expected at least 75% of that money to come in, and 8.5 million is about 75% or thereabouts, so I have no qualms with that. In terms of the allocation plan, I had submitted a number of recommendations related to the original proposal, but the original proposal, if you remember, included the additional amount if we increase the extra capacity fee. Since we didn't, I've tailored my allocation recommendations to the 8.5 million. So with that, let me just mention that I've tried to focus on one-time expenditures, with the exception of what I consider to be problem solving with regard to the budget that was passed. Specifically, with regard to layoffs, I recommend that we utilize this money for filling the 16 fire captain positions that were vacant, as well as the animal services employees. Now, we projected $1 million for the Mission Hills shelter. This is a brand-new shelter that was constructed, not staffed, and we calculated 13 on the basis of the budget item at 840,000. We put $1 million in for other operational costs, but we come in conversation I just had with Mr. Box. He's saying that amount could be sufficient to provide for all 28 proposed layoff positions. I don't know the math. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's something for, I think, this committee to consider. I have no problems using the $1 million to save all 28 positions, if that could happen.
Hold on. Let me just ask you that you not have any more outbursts, because he just may say something later you don't
Please, they
like.
about gave me a heart attack.
Let's just let the presentations go and not eat into the time of the speakers.
Yeah, that was not planned, by the way, Mr. Chair.
It frightened me. I'm just glad they weren't moving.
See, now, we don't have
The dog in the front row almost came to life on that.
We don't have before us today the expenditure part. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Right, I'm just, a lot of people have taken interest in this for obvious reasons, so might as well present this. I understand that there may be a different way to handle the allocation process. I have no problem with that. But I do want to say that if you separate out the proposed layoffs from this proposal, 80% of the money is used for one-time expenditures. I'm not trying to create ongoing expenses specifically for my district, and the vast majority of dollars would be spent for citywide services. So, for example, Ms. Gruhl knows, as Chair of Transportation, I was very fortunate to receive a state grant of $250,000 for speed humps around schools and parks. Most of my schools and parks will have speed humps. The $500,000 that we've included in here will probably not come to my district. It'll probably go citywide. I'm concerned about safety of kids wherever they may be, and wherever those allocations would be best used to save lives is where I would want them to go. The Green Business Certification Program is a unique of all these proposals. I would say that is a unique proposal, because it would create a new program that is very much in the hands of Environmental Affairs Department. They're very excited about this program. It's consistent with programs that have been established throughout in different parts of the state of California. It would essentially encourage businesses, incentivize them to create green business practices, and at an investment of $300,000, it's one that we want to get going. The fact is that we are applying for a state grant for the ongoing services in the Green Business Certification Program. This would be the seed money to get the program going, so that we would have a greater opportunities for success in the grant funding. But I would also point out that we're anticipating this would be a one-time expenditure, because we do expect to get state grant money for that. The street sweeping program is intended sort of as a buffer. It takes a long time for them to get that program going. If we determine that the $8.5 million is not real, that it comes out to be far less, I think we have the greatest flexibility in the street sweeping program. It is a needed service. As you are well aware, we have not increased the street sweeping allocation to any new streets in 10 years. And so this would provide the signed street sweeping, because it is the signage that takes up a lot of the first-time expenditures. It is not an ongoing expense. Of the $3 million, only $800,000 would be ongoing. That would create 200 miles of street sweeping. Again, that would be a citywide expenditure. I don't know where those miles would go. I would like to get some in my district, but I can't make that a firm designation. The four-way stop sign, in a conversation I had with Chairman Parks, he expressed this. I think that's very consistent with my speed hump program around schools and parks, trying to increase the safety for our kids first. And I inserted the $500,000 after a conversation with Mr. Parks. I think that's a good idea. I recognize that these oh, by the way, with regard to the Northeast Animal Care Shelter, I do want to mention that there was a bond measure 10 years ago that promised to build a shelter, but it also promised that it would be operational. It's great to have a shelter built and brand new, and it smells nice. But if it's not operational, and frankly, I don't care what it smells like after it's operational, it's not functioning. It's not committing to the promise. I want to point out that I have a senior citizen center in my district on Van Nuys Boulevard that was fully funded, fully constructed, and never used. It is now bob-wired on a 2-acre parcel that should be used for a park or other likely service. It is bob-wired, and we lost millions of dollars on that program. The building cannot have any other consequence besides a demolition. It was complete waste of city funding. I don't want to see that happen at the animal shelter in Mission Hills. I only hope that we recognize that exigent circumstances, particularly now with the foreclosure crisis, we are seeing. If I had 606, I showed you the map of the 606 foreclosures that I've had just since April in my district. Know that people are not taking their animals with them because they can't take them into apartments many times. And those animals are being left either in the property or left to run the streets. We need these services now all over the city of Los Angeles. If we can ensure that we staff up the Mission Hill site, and if we can save these other 15 positions citywide, I think we can accommodate the needs of what is a very strange economy right now that is causing a foreclosure situation that is forcing animals to be homeless. And so I think these programs are reasonable. By the way, the allocation for $600,000 for the gang program has already been utilized, allocated, and spent. So that is a no-brainer. And then we did provide about 7% for the reserve fund, which is more than the amount that we allocated proportionately in the citywide budget. I would appreciate it if the committee sent the CAO's report on, continue to work with the chair on the allocation plan, if that's the desire of the committee. But I do think that these services are critical. I would like to see these positions secured, although I am made aware by the mayor's staff that the mayor is fully supportive of finding a way to avoid these layoffs. This is a source for that. Should it become necessary, I'm fully supportive of that. If they find another source, that's fine too. Then we can talk about another reallocation program. But at this point, that's about it for my presentation. I appreciate your cooperation in this process and the help. The ongoing impact on the budget will be about $6 million, and I think that's good news. A little bit of good news in a big budget. It's not great news, but it's good news, and hopefully we can find some more out there. Anyway, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Let me say, I think from reading the report, I think the issues that were brought up by the CLA are areas that are consistent with prior budgetary policies of gaining full cost recovery, so I don't see there's an issue there. I do think that the list of proposed projects, I'd like to get them to CAO to bring to the committee so that we can evaluate them as after this process of adopting this goes through, that we look at the projects independently of this report with the CAO-CLA attachment. The one thing I think it would be important for the committee to have is some judgment of what is the expected amount of recovery. If we're talking what figures, we know it's not going to be exact, but if they can make a projection, and with that projection, the issue then would be, then how does that impact what the recommended list is?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I think we need to ask the CAO-CLA to give us, if people, I think it was 5% said I won't pay for the extra cans, from sanitation and others, if we can get some idea, what would be the unintended consequences of people not getting the cans, but do we then end up with more debris on the streets, more illegal dumping, variety of things of that nature? So at least that discussion is held, so we'd have some idea that what we might expect, so that we're not looking down the road and find that there are issues that we did not think about or discuss. So I think if we ask the CAO to put that in their report back as we evaluate the funding plan. Yes, Jose, you have anything?
So the people that are here to talk about this today realize that we are not approving today a list of things to fund, that we can't in good conscience do that until we know what the revenue stream is going to be. And we don't know that yet because the department's just begun to identify the number of people that are willing to pay that extra fee. We did already approve a $600 and some odd thousand expenditure for the gang program based on an analysis that $600,000 was a reasonable amount that we knew was going to come in. But whether we ever got to $8 million or not, we have no idea of knowing yet. And so today we're not approving anything in the way of a list of projects to be funded. That is yet to come until we know the revenue stream. I think that's important because I know there's a lot of people who want to talk about that today. That's not what this item is today. This item really is to approve the going forward of the program, to identify it, to get the money in, and then once that money starts rolling in, we'll have a good idea how much. So just wanted everybody to know that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to say I'm an animal lover. I actually adopted 2 cats this weekend. It's a very personal thing with me about animals, and I frankly would do everything I could conceivably do so that there would be no layoffs in your department. But this is not the time for this discussion. I'd like to ask the Department of Sanitation to come up for a second and give us some insight right now as to how we're doing with this issue. That
Let me get the community cards done, and then the staff can answer their questions.
Sure. Okay. All right. But I just want to say to the community folks, you got my support if there was money and we could work it out and make things happen. But we're not in that position today to talk about it. It's totally premature because we don't know how much money we're going to take in this strategy, and we don't know what impact it's going to have on our overall other aspects of our budget. But I just want you to know that it isn't about laying off workers. It isn't about cutting back. I frankly would like to incent in my district a whole new registration program that we've been talking about getting to get our animals registered. There's a lot of sympathy for that. But frankly, this whole point today is I want to know if we have really money coming in from sanitation, and to tell the community people here there might be a time down the road when we actually might have some money then to decide how we could keep that money and keep it for animal services. So I just don't know why you're all here, other than maybe you were told that this was an important moment to say something.
Well, I should say that I was under the impression that we were going to have the allocation plan voted on.
Oh,
so if there was a message out there, it probably came from my staff, because we thought this was the important meeting.
Oh, God, I want to apologize to everybody who had that impression. This is not a meeting to discuss where monies are going to go when we don't even know, like to use my expression, the chickens haven't come home to roost yet. We don't know how much money we're even talking about, better yet, how it would be allocated. I'm sorry about that, Richard.
Okay. Let me start off with, and I'm going to call 4 or 5 names. We'd ask you to come up to the front desk, and for those that would stand in line so we can get you through, you got 1 minute on the clock. First person would be Tariq Caro, Lisa Jans.
Got everybody's and all that. Sure.
We have a seat there. We're going to go through. We have a card. If someone failed to put their name on it, they said they're here for the layoffs of 29 positions. Their address is on Radford, North Hollywood, but you didn't put a name on it. Next is Irene Ponce. Is it Rita Gorman? Is it Rita? Rita Gorman. Okay. Okay.
Very good.
All right. And then get in line behind Gilbert Greenbaum and Donald Bentley. All right, we can get started. You get 2 in line, and then we get moving. And those, when you finish, you give up your seat to the next person.
Am I beginning? Okay. My name is Brita Gorman. I'm an ACT at East Valley Animal Shelter. I know I respect what you're saying today. I'm glad that we're here in force. It affects not just animals. It's affecting society as a whole. To give you an idea, LAPD, they ask us to come and remove animals from their vehicles. Okay? They have guns. I've got a rope. We deal with behavioral animals that are dangerous to society. We are dealing now, obviously, with a lot of animals that are being turned in. We are dealing with stray animals, animals that have been hit, animals that are being butchered, being sold, which this does have to do a lot with a lot of illegal activity that's going on. The people that work at the ACTs that work at the shelters are dealing with every known possible situation. We are a big impact on society, and our jobs, okay.
You want to finish your sentence?
Jobs are very important to us.
Okay. All right.
And mean a lot to us.
Very good. Next.
Hi, good morning. My name is Irene Ponce, Commissioner with LA Animal Services today, and I'm here to also, I'm in support of Councilmember Alarcon's recommendation with giving us the money that we need to maintain the existing ACTs that are with the department at the moment. I'm fully aware that every time there's a cut, LAPD or the fire department doesn't receive a cut, but LA Animal Services is a quasi-military organization as well, and we should not be cut at all because of the fact that if we had a natural disaster, an earthquake, fire, a city unrest in the city, we would not have enough staff to man the shelters. As a matter of fact, we need more ACTs. They are the heart and soul of this department. They do the job that nobody else would do. It's a tough job. And wherever you can find any funding to keep these 28 employees employed that take care of our animals, I'd surely appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Good afternoon, Lisa Janes, Life Opposed Animal Rescue and a resident of Los Angeles City. I understand that you have not you're not able to allocate the funds, but how long is it going to take and are the jobs going to be lost before you are able to allocate these particular funds? I implore the city to find the funds to keep these 28 jobs previous, because the ACTs are wholly needed in the city of Los Angeles for numerous reasons. They are the heart and the soul of LAS. They meet the public, they educate the public, they assist with the problem of pet population. I implore you to find the funds to keep their jobs, even if it's not coming from our Pecan's area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tariq Caro. I'm a commissioner for the Department of Animal Services. I've been so for almost 4 years. Very briefly, I understand that we're not here to talk about this, but I figure if I have my minute, I'll take it. The ACTs, as important as the department is to the city, the ACTs are to the department. They are the foundation of the department. To compromise the foundation would mean to compromise the entire structure.
Yes.
And it's not just the fact of the work, the man and the woman hours, but it's the manner of work. It is heartwarming and heartbreaking, and without that commitment that they show from the inside, the department really can't function. And so I just would urge you, when that moment comes to make this decision, if indeed those funds are available, please keep this in mind, that the future of the department really depends on people like this.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have the next Mr. Greenbaum, and then Donald LaBella. Do we have a person here on Radford, Apartment 1, that didn't put your name, going once, going twice? And then Phyllis Doherty and Stacy Dancy.
My name is Gilbert Greenbaum. I'm a volunteer at the East Animal Shelter, East Valley, that is. I became a volunteer last September, as a matter of fact, when I first visited the shelter and saw this fantastic animal shelter with all these animals well taken care of by a whole bunch of dedicated ACTs and volunteers. It made me feel good that I was part of that community, and I wanted to share in that. So I joined as a volunteer and have put in about 700 hours since that time frame. Been involved in about 300 to 400 adoptions, and have really enjoyed the work. I also enjoy people coming up to me when they visit the shelter and say, "Boy, this place is great." You know, it's really feels good that the city is doing this. So please, let's not ruin that reputation by getting rid of the people that make it happen. The ACTs are crucial to keeping that shelter running and keeping those animals well fed and well taken care of. Please find the money for doing this. And by the way, I received that letter, and I'd be happy to contribute my portion of that collection to keeping these 28 employees. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm animal care technician Don Lamboulay. I would like to first clarify that the Northeast shelter is operational. We're currently using it as an annex for evidence animals, dangerous animals, etc. We're actually helping alleviate the stress of some of the other shelters by taking in some of the mama puppies and kittens, the tough part of the job, so to help alleviate some of the stress, but it's still not enough. I would also like to state that my fellow ACTs, quite bluntly, I don't consider them friends. I consider them my comrades in arms. These are people whose lives depend on me and vice versa. I haven't felt like this since I was in the service. We're the same way as like the LAPD. Officer down gets one of the fastest response times, period. Same deal in a shelter. Shelter workers down, we all jump to their aid. Anybody needs help, that's our job. I'd also like to say that people will say that euthanasias will go up. I somewhat disagree. It may be neglect that would kill more animals because we won't be staffed enough in the vet side, the animal control officer side, et cetera. So then neglect is still cruelty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stacy Dancy. I'm an animal control officer out of the East Valley Animal Shelter. The Department of Animal Services is as important as the police and fire department and constantly needed resource for the city and its citizens. Daily foreclosures have caused the public to walk away, not only from their homes, but their animals. When this occurs, the animals become our charges, whether picked up by as abandoned by officers or actually walked into the shelter by their owners. Presently, our kennels are overcrowded beyond capacity on a daily basis, and they are run on understaffed ACT shifts 24 hours a day. Unlike a library or swimming pool facility, animals are not seasonal items and cannot be put on temporary hold. Animals are living, breathing beings that need food, housing, medical care, and compassion at all times. The animals will not stop coming into the shelters. More and more animals will continue to need our help and assistance. Let's lead by a positive example of valuing the employees of our city so that we can be able to do and provide the quality, humane, responsible care for the animals in our charge.
Okay. Phyllis, before you start, let me call three other people who come up. I can't read the last name. Sophia, also Linda Barth, and General Manager Ed Bolts. If you can come up to those three seats. Okay.
Phyllis Doherty with the Animal Issues Movement. I've been a 20-year volunteer with Los Angeles City Animal Shelters. I want to tell you that the people that we have hired now, as you can tell, are an exceptional group of people. We've made a tremendous investment in them already, and certainly they're the best employees that we've had ever in our Los Angeles City Animal Shelters. If we lose them now, not only are we losing the present, we are also losing the future, because these are the people that will be stepping up into the management positions of this department. We can't afford to lose them. You can't say that we can't afford to keep them. We can't afford to lose them. If we lose this ground level, as Commissioner Turek said, we will actually be losing the foundation of this department, not only now, but for the future. Animal control is very complex. It's very hard to learn. It's very hard to survive in. When you have people that can handle it both physically and emotionally, you need to hang on to them. And we need to be especially aware that we do not want the dog packs in the street again. We do not want the attacks. And it's these people that are stopping that.
My name is Sophia Cherkashna, and I pose a question to you guys. How many of you have pets? How many of you have children? Okay, so if those kids land in the hospital and the hospital is understaffed and overworked and can't take care of your kids, this is the same thing that's going on in our shelters. We are already understaffed, as it were, and if we cut out another 28 people, that's cutting out care for our animals, our family. In America, pets have become family. Pets have become kids to some people. So I implore you to please, I know it's difficult and I know we're not trying to allocate money right now, but please find it somewhere. It's extraordinarily important for the heart and soul of Los Angeles.
Linda Barth, Assistant General Manager of Animal Services. I just wanted to highlight very quickly, in the budget process, all city departments were asked to provide efficiencies of about 8%, although that was somebody else's. I stole 13 seconds. Despite the fact that Animal Services is a public safety department, that point has been made by your other speakers, several of your other speakers here. We are a public safety department. And nevertheless, our department was cut 15%. And I particularly want to raise to your attention today that there is a clock ticking in the city of Los Angeles, and it's ticking to October 1st when mandatory spay-neuter is the law of the city of Los Angeles. There's another clock that's almost running on the same timetable. Right about that same time, we will be out of money, and we'll have no choice but to lay off approximately 28 workers. And we're very, very hopeful, that's only about 4 weeks, to be able to come up with some alternatives that allow us to keep these crucial employees on in our department and help us accomplish the mission you've set for us. Thank you.
Before you start, let me ask Penny Dermer, Ms. Gersten Laura Beth Heisen. Come on up. Okay, Ed.
Ed Boakes, General Manager of LA Animal Services. First of all, I want to thank all the council members. I believe we're working with all of your offices on a series of public workshops dealing with the concept of creating a humane LA. And I want to especially thank Chairman Parks for leading that effort just this last week and for coming to that meeting. And I think it's ironic, if not tragic, that we're all working together to create a more humane LA while we're facing or saddled with a budget that precludes the opening of a brand-new $14 million animal care shelter in the San Fernando Valley that requires the reduction of hours, that cuts 56 positions from the department's budget, 28 of which will result in layoffs. This is a $2.5 million budget, 15%, one of the most drastic cuts of any city department. As it has been pointed out, LA Animal Services is the only public safety department to take any hits, much less one of the most significant hits. The folks you're hearing from today are our ACTs. They are the heroes of this community. They are doing the job that so many people ask, how could you do that job? And their response is, how could you not? They step up where nobody else does. In the last couple of years or several years, we have built one of the most extraordinary animal welfare departments. We're the #1 pet adoption agency in the world, adopting out over 25,000 animals, dogs and cats, every year. It's the ACTs that do that. We've reduced the euthanasia rate to historic lows. It's the ACTs who do that. If we incur this type of budget cut, all bets are off. It really is a step back into the past. So we really ask the committee to support Councilman Alarcon's allocation of these funds to assist the department.
Let me ask Ed, when we went through the budget process and the recommended cuts, were there other things that you would have offered up other than these positions?
This is the irony of the process, is that the departments were asked to make several proposals, and we did make a couple proposals as sort of an either or, and the city, for whatever reason, chose both. We said that we could reduce the opening or restrict the opening of one facility for a period of time, or we could reduce the number of hours that were open to the public. It was an either or. What came back in the budget was the inclusion of both.
And these
we're not prepared for that.
These would be ongoing expenses, they're not one-time expenses.
That's correct.
Okay. I'd ask, as we've given direction to CLA-CAO to look at the allocation of these funds once we determine how much of the funds are coming in, that you give your input to them as it relates to animal services so that we can be aware of that once that report back comes forward.
Absolutely. And if I could just close.
I'll second that.
And if I could just close it with commenting on AGM Barth's comment that the clock is ticking. If we lose these employees now and then have to re-gear up in the future, the extraordinary expense to the city in training perhaps some of the finest employees the department has ever been able to attract, to lose them now and then to try to start all over would be an extraordinary loss to the city.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you again, not to have an outburst. We're trying to get through a number of cards. We have a number of items on the agenda. Next, let me ask Teresa McClure to come up, and we can start over here with your comment.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you. I want to say that as things are... my name is Laura Beth Heisen. As it is now, with the current staffing level, the ACTs are in a constant state of triage. I spent a lot of time volunteering in the animal shelters. They run from one emergency to the next, 2 customers at a time. The dog with the smelly poop needs care and her cage needs cleaning out. They are constantly doing triage to figure out what is the most important at the time. There is no space for them to take on more. If you look at the Proposition F website showing the number of kennels that have increased since the new shelters opened, and not counting Northeast or South LA that don't have their new shelters open yet, we've gone from 235 dog kennels to 743 dog kennels. That's a serious increase in the amount of work that these ACTs have to do when they were already stretched. And so cutting 25% of them is going to make it an impossible and unconscionable situation for them that nobody could humanly do. And so the choices are, you have to even it out, either find the money, which this measure will do, or you have to kill a lot of them or have the public be angry. And so please, find the money, and this measure seems like the right way. And if it doesn't work, please find it somewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Penina Gersten. I'm a volunteer with LAAS.
Speak in the mic, please.
The ACTs are the lifeline of the animals. They are the public face of LAAS. Essentially, they are the force that makes and breaks the daily operation of the shelters. In a time where animal intake has risen and adoptions are dropping, to lay off a quarter of the already understaffed ACTs will only result in a disaster. Basically, right now, we have at East Valley approximately 7 ACTs during the day, 3 on swing, 3 on grave. They can't get their jobs done. It's going to snowball at the end, where basically all the work we've done to improve the city is going to fail, and we will start back where we started many, many years ago. So I beg you to find funds to keep them.
Thank you very much. Let me ask Jacob Miller and Shelley Mack to come up next to, we start with.
My name is Penny Dermer,
Okay.
and I've been a volunteer to the East Valley Shelter over about 6 years, I believe. And first of all, thank you for your time. I just want to suggest to you guys, any of you, to visit any animal shelter and observe for a short while, as long as you can, the ACT workers and what they do in the shelter. I've been in the shelters almost on a daily basis. And sometimes they have breaks that they pass the breaks, they won't take a break to eat lunch, or if they have to go home, they'll stay over the time to help us, to help the dogs, to help the animals. And they bring incredible help to all of us, not just to the animals, also the community. And to pass so many good people, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be shameful for all of us. For each of us, I would highly suggest to observe them, what they do, even if it's a few minutes of your time. Thank you very much.
Teresa, before you get started, let me ask Jacob Miller, Shelley Mack, and Erdley Norman to come up. Okay, Teresa?
Yes, my name's Teresa McClure, and I'm just a citizen, a concerned citizen. Without the ACT, you're going to be putting animals to death. You're going to be slaughtering them because there's nobody to take care of them. There's only 2 people, they want to put 2 people, ACT people, to 1,000 animals. How can they possibly take care of 1,000 animals? Without them, they find homes for them. They find the right homes so the people don't bring them back. For instance, my friend adopted through the ACT a golden retriever. It was in a cage for 8 years in a puppy mill. They severed its vocal cords so it couldn't bark, so they couldn't tell where the puppy mill was. So through the ACT, it found a home, finally. It's just been in the house for 1 whole week now. I mean, without this ACT, we would have nothing. These animals would be slaughtered. And I would think the city were just animal killers, and that's how I feel about it. And I must add, the legislators did their jobs. They would make the budget, and we would not be going through with this today. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Erdley Norman, and ACT from East Valley Animal Shelter. I just want you guys to imagine 1:30 in the morning, there's a dog fight. I come out to go to the cages, and there are 600 or 700 dogs, and everybody's barking. I have to go through all that noise just to find what cage the fight is in. When I get there, the cage that's supposed to hold 1 dog has 4 dogs in it. And according to the cuts that you guys are proposing, I'll be the only person on shift. That means I have to go into a cage with 4 dogs fighting. I just want you guys to imagine the cost to the city if I get in that cage and I get attacked by a dog. But it will cost you more than you plan to save right now.
For those that don't understand English, please don't have an outburst so we can get through the courts. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Let me call Jacob Miller. You're Jacob?
Yes.
Shelley Mack and Jane Paul.
Hi, my name is Jacob Miller. I'm an animal care technician at the East Valley Animal Care and Control Center. I've been with this department for about 7 years. I've met with quite a number of you folks at the different events that we've held, as well as the opening of our shelter. In fact, actually, it was a wonderful watermelon festival that you had in your district. Thank you very much. Either way, I realize that we aren't here to talk about allocating the money, but as they've all said, the clock is ticking. September 27th, there are going to be layoffs if the money isn't there, and we are going to be hit very hard. The first thing we're going to be seeing is all the dogs are going to get sick. You're going to see less adoptions, more euthanasias. It's going to be less time for us to counsel the public and do what we have to do About 1 in 10 animals that comes to that door, because I have a few minutes on the side, I can talk with these owners, try and work out some kind of solution for them that works for them, whether it's helping them find a place that's going to take their pet, or just assuring them that some things just take time with training. I won't have this time, though, to be able to talk to these people individually if I have to work nonstop with less employees. It's not going to be safe. That's why I ask that you find the funding, you find it soon, very soon.
What is your name again, sir?
My name is Jacob Miller.
Jacob, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Let me say, Shelley Mack, she's gone. All right, you're Jane Paul?
I am.
Okay, let me ask Julie Butcher, Christy, what is that, Metropole? She's gone. Larry Sullivan, Kathy Reardon, Commissioner. Okay, why don't you start?
Thank you. My name is Jane Paul, and I'm here on behalf of the Green LA Coalition. Green LA is comprised of more than 100 environmental justice, and community-based organizations. I'm here to express our strong support for the Extra Capacity Fees Clean City, Better World program, and in particular to ask you to please prioritize the allocation of funds for the Green Business Certification Program. The Green Business Certification Program is a sure method to have businesses of all sizes and in multiple communities improve their practices in energy efficiency, water conservation, pollution prevention, and waste management. The program will have a positive impact on the environment, on the survival of small businesses, on the health and productivity of workers, and on the green profile of Los Angeles. The Green Business Certification Program requires both public and private support for an effective launch and to attract critical partnerships. The return on investment to the city will be powerful, as will the benefits to our community and the impact of our fight against climate change. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Reardon.
Hi, Kathy Reardon. I'm on the Animal Services Commission, and I also am a Los Angeles resident. We're not just asking you to budget compassion, though that shouldn't be something you should question, but we're also asking you to budget public safety, liability. We don't even have a public information officer. These people are salespeople. So if you want us to strive towards no kill, you want us to fulfill our legal mandate to humanely care for these animals, and you want us to do any kind of outreach to the public. You don't want us to push hold and put the person on hold for 20 minutes, and you want us to actually interact with the public when they come into the shelter. You don't want to cut any of these positions. In fact, you want to add to it. So I hope you find the pennies anywhere. I will get 4 extra containers, even if they sit empty every month. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask also Alex Poe, and is it Marcy Drummond? Come on up. All right, Larry?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Larry Sullivan. Councilwoman Gruhl, 3.5 years late, but thank you for the pilot program, 50/50, fixing the sidewalk in front of my house. So anyway, okay, so seriously though, people send pictures of their kids to you all the time. My sister sends them to me, and it's kind of becomes that thing where you're like, enough. I see that they look the same as they did yesterday, but I have become that guy, and these are my kids. They're Opie and Lexi, and I got them both from the West LA shelter. And literally, I send these pictures to people all the time, and I know they're talking like I did, and they're like, stop sending me pictures of your dogs, but they mean so much to me, and I got them because of the people behind me. And they took them in. One of them was a stray, one of them was turned in, an owner surrender. And when I wasn't there to feed them and to pet them and to take care of them, the people behind me were. And that means the world to me, because these two, for 7 years, have brought more joy to my life than I can ever explain. And you guys just have to know, I'm an actor, which means nothing compared to what they do, but if I had a series, I'd make up for their funds. But I don't yet. So can you guys try to just, eventually I will, knock on wood, but but for now I don't. And so I'm asking you, please, I can't get any more parking tickets, but if that's where the money goes, I'll park somewhere illegal. So thank you for your time, and thank you for the sidewalks.
You should go to the comedy store.
Anything.
Okay, Julie.
Well, I don't know what I was going to say, but I actually want to thank the folks that have We're here actually because we were at the Animal Services Commission this morning, and Ed Boakes told us to come here because where we really needed to come to get money was here. So that's why we are here. What we're doing while we're here is opposing the layoffs of these workers. I've heard the word unconscionable, and I actually tried to spell it, and I can't. So, but it is unconscionable that this department, since the time that these layoffs were announced, added a second assistant general manager to the tune of $175,000 a year. Also in the budget are 4 funded, unfilled management-level jobs at the district supervisor level at $90,000 a clip. That's about half the cost of these workers sitting behind me. The other half, frankly, is one of those things we've been pushing for years and years and years, and that is to license the animals of this city, rather than laying off the workers.
Sorry, we're out of control. We gotta license them all.
The justification.
No.
The justification for being able to lay these workers off, based on the information the department has given us, was that it would be okay because we're going to reduce the number of hours that the shelters are open to the public. With all due respect, as much as they'd like to, these animals don't go home. Whether or not the shelters are open to the public, actually one of the workers explained to management in a meeting we had last week, the only difference is that the fewer hours that we're open to the public, the less money we have the opportunity to generate to cover the costs of providing these services. So I'd urge you to hold this department accountable for their budget, and to, at the same time, urge you to figure out how we act to mitigate these layoffs and to keep these committed caring workers working. Thank you.
Alex Pugh, Marcy Drummond, and is it Gutierrez, Miguel Engel? Okay. Could you give your name?
Yes, hello. My name is Marcy Drummond. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs at Los Angeles Trade Technical College. I know that you are not going to decide about the allocations, but when you do find that this is a viable revenue source, I'm here to encourage you to prioritize the Green Business Certification Program as one of those that you would consider funding with the revenue stream. As a college, we are committed not only to be implementing the Green Business Certification at our college, but we also, as a trade technical college, want to be one of the key partners to help implement this program throughout the city. It will be a very innovative program that will enable the city to meet its green and sustainability standards as well as its goals, but it'll also provide an opportunity for new jobs for people who work and live, particularly in my service area, which is in central and south central LA. And we are very committed to being a partner and helping to implement the program and to leverage the resources that you would allocate through this funding source. We're ready to actually allocate resources to match it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Pugh with the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, and like speakers before me, I realize that you're not here to allocate the money today, but we do want to urge you to prioritize the Green Business Program. In the city of Los Angeles, there's this amazing opportunity for businesses to show how green they are, and there's businesses that are already doing it, but I think in terms of being able to actively point your finger and say, okay, this business is green, this business is green, and we're trying to figure out how to do that on our own. We could really use the help of the city of Los Angeles as a partner, and we actively support this program and hope to get to work with the city on this in the future.
Thank you very much. Let me call three of the Glenn Brown, Joyce Forrest, and Meg Dickler Taylor. Mr. Brown left.
So we need, she's going to take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then Lois Arkin.
Hi, I'm Miguel Gutierrez. I'm an animal care technician for East Valley Animal Shelter, the shelter that provides service to the San Fernando Valley, North Hollywood, Pacoima, Panorama City, Sylmar. And I cannot imagine my shelter being understaffed. We are understaffed as it is right now. I cannot imagine my shelter being laid off with 28 people. It's just something that it cannot happen. The community will suffer of this.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Joyce Forrest. I've been a volunteer with LA Animal Services for over 14 years. I do a lot of volunteer work at the South LA shelter, And I would like to tell you that I see the ACTs, and not only are they working hard, they are overworked. They're not taking their breaks, as has been stated previously. Not only do we need to maintain these invaluable employees, we need to add more ACTs to assist them.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Meg Dickler-Taylor, and this is Ann Bradley. We are here representing the Silver Lake Chamber of Commerce today, and we're here to support the funding of a green business certification program in the city of Los Angeles. Let me just say that we have no interest in promoting the funds being diverted from preserving important jobs. However, we are a group of businesses, and we realize that you are not voting on what to allocate the funds to today, but we do want to show our support as a group of businesses who have come together to encourage other businesses in our neighborhood to green their bottom line. We want to start our own pilot program ahead of the proposed rollout of the citywide program in Los Angeles, using the guidelines based on the Bay Area Green Business Association's guidelines, which have been very successful, and also the city of Santa Monica, which has an excellent program. The city has a goal of becoming zero waste. The city of Los Angeles has a goal of becoming zero waste by 2020. The stakeholders in that scenario are the consumer and the producer of goods and services. The producers of goods and services, the providers of goods and services have to be called to task for participating in achieving that goal. Thank you.
Lois, before you start, let me ask Jennifer Frankovas. And that's our last card unless someone...
Is Lois here?
Is Lois Arkin and Jennifer Frankovas. Going one straight. Now you can applaud.
Can I, Mr. Parks, I know we're going to go. I just want to thank everyone for being here, and we've heard from you in the past, and I think regardless of how much money we get, which we'll talk about in a moment with Public Works, the broad base of support really is important, and having enough ACT officers is important. So regardless of the other things we do, I think we should instruct sometime today as well for the department with the CLA and CAO to come back to give us some options and financial, say again, what? Quickly, Mr. Yes, quickly.
End of September.
With some of the costs associated, so we have a real figure in front of us and things that we can do immediately, because this kind of outpouring is great, and we hope to address it before it gets to the budget process and before the mayor proposes his budget, which is how that originally came forward. So I just wanted to personally say thank you to everyone that was here, because I appreciate all your comments. And thanks for the 50-50 comment.
Let me ask the CAO and CLA to come up, please. Let me ask CEO, how quickly do you think you can get some assessment on what the potential revenues are?
As I understand, Emilio Rodriguez, CEO, as I understand, the Bureau of Sanitation is in the process of working with DWP to coordinate the billing of approximately 66,000 customer billings, and these are essentially customers who did not respond to the initial courtesy notice that the Bureau put out. I think the Bureau can actually better answer that. I would quickly estimate about 2 months.
Good afternoon, Alex. Hello for the Bureau of Sanitation. We did send a letter to Department of Water and Power telling them to start charging 66,000 residents in the city for the extra bins that they have. DWP councilman told us they will take about 6 weeks to enter the information into their system, and then after that we'll start the billing. So Emilio is absolutely correct. It's going to take about probably a month or so, because some of them might challenge or request that to be removed from their bill or take the containers back.
Okay. Let me ask, do we have any idea how the 160,000 containers went out unregistered?
We have actually like 77,000 residents, and when you multiply that by the units, which is like 30 units increments, comes up to about 160,000.
Yeah,
When we send the request, the letter out informing the residents that we're going to start charging them, about 10,000 people have requested to be removed.
Going back further, earlier in the process, how did they get the bins? Because we had an ordinance in place How did they get the bins initially without being charged? Maybe that's-
Good question. When the Bureau started in the beginning, residents were getting the black bin, and they were getting the yellow bins. And so what happened as the recycling progressed over the years, over the last 10 years, the yellow bins were retrieved and the blue bins were coming in with the 60-gallon of the green bin. Some residents, and as the replacement cycle started about 3-4 years ago to replace the black as well as the green because they reached the end of their life cycle, a couple things happened. One of them is, actually just before that, what happened is the Bureau wanted to encourage, and the council wanted to encourage residents to recycle more. So they were allowing them to take more green bins. You call in, you come. Plus we had an issue with the illegal dumping and things were happening many years ago, so residents were allowed to have extra bins. They just have to go to the district and they pick up one. Over the last few years, we've become more and more strict of how we're delivering of the bins. And as the replacement cycle started about 4 years ago, of replacing the black and the green, residents were we started documenting, and then we left notices at residents telling them, this is an extra bin that you have, you need to call. We did not really enforce it by doing a follow-up. We just left the notice on. We did record the data of what they have. Also, the residents who had 60-gallon, council decided to go up to 90-gallon on the green. So that was like 30-gallon extra. So some residents turned to 60, they get the 90. Some people decided to keep the extra 30 gallons. So it's really complicated, but we tried to clean it up now.
Yeah. But I think the dilemma is, and I think this happens more often than we like, is there was an ordinance passed that said there'd be a certain cost for overcapacity. Somewhere in the process, it didn't get put in place and it wasn't enforced. And what I can imagine, there are those who probably have been using extra capacity for a while, and all of a sudden they get a letter that says your bill is going to jump up to this, when for years or whatever they thought it was for free. So I'm just trying to figure out what was the breakdown that didn't implement the original ordinance.
And I think because some people did get, the question is, it wasn't an overall policy, it seems like it was some areas of the city were charged, some areas were not, and that the impression that is given that there were winks and nods in certain parts of the city that they didn't have to pay. And that's what we heard, kind of whispering about that, because everyone was surprised to see that this was this amount of money that hadn't been charged to people and that it wasn't consistently enforced. And so I'm not sure we're hearing right now exactly where the problem was, other than a variety of people doing different things and not really what the ordinance said.
Well, we have about 70,000 being charged. Absolutely correct, Councilor.
So 70.
And then
70,000, that's the overcapacity.
That's what being charged, and there were equally amount that were not being charged. From the letters that went out, we had a lot of people question that they have the container. They said whether lost, stolen, I didn't have the container, was damaged. And so from the 77,000 notice that went out, only 66 did not respond. But the 10,000 had they responded, we had to take the containers back. Or they said they did not have the containers and we had to do the checkup. So we don't really know from the 66,000 how many will say, I don't have the containers anymore. And sometimes what happens, people buy a new home, they have an old container, they call for a new one, we deliver a new one. And if they have the old one, say, well, we don't have it, or it's in the backyard or something, we would have to send people to check on those things.
But in the past, how? So you're just saying that it wasn't implemented on a standardized basis? Because 70,000 people were paying, and there was 160 or 70,000 that were not paying.
About 77 were not paying. According to our records, now we show 66,000.
And Mr. Parks, let's maybe go, when I looked at the numbers, because you sent out letters to people, and thus far the responses have been 6% indicate they will pay the fee, 30% have requested their containers be picked up, and 55% are disputing the fee. And then there's 66,000 that have been unresponsive. So is the 8 million based on the 6%, or?
The 8.5 actually is based on the entire amount, the 77,683 residents, which is 160,000 units.
So if 30% have said they want to have them taken, so you need to reduce the 8.5 to reflect that 30% have said we don't want them.
Well, the 55, Councilwoman, is only based on the people who responded back, which is 6,000 something. That's the survey.
So
those are people that called back.
So the
wasn't
8 million is?
The 8 million, if
Sorry, am I asking?
No,
if I can just clarify,
Okay.
The 8.5 million is just revenue potential associated with 78,000 unregistered units.
Okay, so that's 78,000 maximum. So if
Correct.
you take 78,000 and you say, okay, 30% of that 78,000, is that the 30% that have responded, or the 30%
No, the
that have
30%
responded?
was really of the people who responded to the initial notice, so it's really a much
So
smaller
it's-
fraction than that.
Okay,
It was 30% of the 6,000.
6,000 that responded. I'm sorry, I thought I heard some 6 number and I couldn't hear. So it's 30% of the 6,000 that responded.
Exactly.
So there's still 66,000 people that have not responded.
And that's what the one we're charging.
So you will begin charging them if they don't respond to you.
That's correct. This was instruction that was given back in Energy and Environment and other committees to start.
And this is a separate notice. It doesn't come in your DWP bill, or is it?
No, the charge actually is going to show up on DWP bill.
No, I understand that. But the notice that you sent out to the owner saying you have an extra bin, did that get sent as a separate mailer or part of the DWP?
Separate mailer by the Bureau of Sanitation.
By the Bureau of Sanitation.
It was in English and Spanish.
Okay. Because I have a feeling when you start charging, and maybe that's part of the response, is you'll get people back, which you all will all get calls. We've gotten some already of people who have disputed and, have gone through that, beginning that process.
I'm just curious about the administration and enforcement of all this. I mean, are you going to spend more money to try to collect this than you're going to collect? I mean, what does your gut tell you where this is at?
Well, we're going to take the residents, overall, we're going to see the calls coming in. We do some verification, and we started doing some already, but really it's very tedious and long process because the supervisors, but we have several methods in place, Councilman. One of them is the drivers. If they notice an address has multiple black bin, to record that information and call it back to the hotline. Our replacement crew who are replacing the containers as they age, they're recording that and they have the database so they can cross-reference it. And we are leaving notices on the extra capacity, and it's red, bold, that they can't open a container unless you really rip it off. It says, this is not being charged, and if you want to keep it, you have to pay. Otherwise, we'll charge you in 30 days.
Yeah. I mean, I'm paying for my extra. I saw it on my bill right away. Do you have any sense of what the overall monies might be? I know it's too early for you to figure this out, of what we might be looking for, anticipating to get.
We have to wait to see what the 66,000 come back, what percent of those want to continue to pay the fee, because we just increased the fee to $36.
Right.
And this is not going to be on top. So
we're going to have report back and report back and report
I think that's
back.
what, too, why we wanted to, on the ACT things, to go ahead and begin to talk about that, because it may be months before we know how much this is actually going to be. Because people in their mail are not that I don't love the Bureau of Sanitation, but it looks like, kind of informative. I don't know if it says a way in which this is going to be a bill, you're going to have to pay more, but we probably won't hear from them until it gets on their bill.
Exactly.
Let me just say, if we move this item with concur with the Ad hoc Renew LA Committee and the amendments by the Environmental and Energy Committee with the requested report backs of this committee that addresses an assessment of when and how much money that this charging will occur. Also, that we have an analysis of what may be the unintended consequences of the overcapacity bans being returned, if we can assess that, and that we ask the general manager of Animal Services to meet with the CLA and the CAO on issues dealing with his animal care employees, and that report back. What do you think you can get back to us on?
I believe 90 days will be, we can get something, 120 days, yeah.
Okay, and you'll be able to give us some assessment of the amount of money that we could be recovering?
We'll work with the CAO and the CLA on that one.
Now, what is the timeline on the loss of personnel in animal services?
I believe that the speaker stated that was the end of September 26th.
Pardon?
The report backs included in here are 60 to 90 days, which may push us past that, but we would be happy to come back to your committee with an update.
Can't hear you.
We would be happy to come back to your committee before the September 26th. It was mentioned by the speakers about the animal control services.
Okay, so the 26th is the date of loss of personnel?
I believe that's the date that they stated up here at the table.
So would we be able to have some assessment of dollar figures and such by that date?
By September 26th, DWP needs 6 weeks. That take us almost to the middle to the end of September. I don't know if we'll bring you whatever data we have at that time,
Okay.
Councilman.
So the thing is we would ask for, I guess, the initial report back on prior to September 26th.
Okay, we'll try, because I know DWP asked for 6 weeks to enter the 66,000 accounts into their
But
computers.
I think we're trying to also be
I know.
sensitive to some loss of position. So we'll ask for the initial one before September 26th, and then you can give us guidance
Okay.
at that time. So we'll move that with those recommended amendments from the Budget and Finance Committee. And let me thank again all those who came and spoke.
Okay, next are item numbers 18 and 19, both dealing with the Plaza Pacoima Retail Center project. Item number 18 is the CAO and CLA Joint Report and Community Development Department report relative to an $8.8 million agreement with Plaza Pacoima to provide funding assistance in the development of the Plaza Pacoima Retail Center project and related actions. Item number 19 is a CAO and CLA Joint Report and CRA report and resolutions relative to various actions.
Okay. Let me just ask, Mr. Alaquan, are you still here?
No.
Come back. Okay. Okay, is the staff going to speak in his behalf, or is?
If we need.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. Why don't you start?
Okay. Good afternoon. Lisa Johnson-Smith, of the City Administrative Officer. The report before you requests authorization for the following: adoption of 2 joint resolutions authorizing payment by CRA for acquisition costs for property to be acquired by the developer, and making required findings to fund public improvements related to the Plaza Pacoima project. Execution of an ownership participation agreement between CRA and the developer to authorize annual acquisition payments of up to $285,000 a year for a 30-year period, an aggregate amount not to exceed $5.8 million, and a $4.1 million lump sum participation public improvement site participation grants. Sources of funds are project area tax increment and other future lawfully available resources. And CDD to draw down $1.4 million Betty grant and a $7.4 million Section 108 loan for a total amount of $8.8 million. There is a September 30th HUD disbursement deadline that the city must draw the funds down by September 25th to meet this deadline. The Betty grant and Section 108 funds will pay for costs related to capitalized interest, acquisition, and pre-construction costs. The Section 108 loan has a 20-year term. The first 3 years are for the interim period, the construction and stabilization period, of which $600,000 will be held from the HUD funds for capitalized interest reserve to make interest-only payments. In the case of any shortfalls during this period, 2 members of the borrower, Prudential and Primestar, will provide independent corporate guarantees to replenish the capitalized interest reserve in amount necessary to meet the debt service payments. HUD will issue permanent bonds for the remaining 17-year period with an annual estimated debt service of $681,000 for a total of $11.6 million. This will be funded with site-specific tax revenue or general fund revenue. So the $11.6 million is the amount over a period of 17 years. During that same time period, the project is anticipated to generate $44.8 million of new general fund revenue, and the 11.6 would come from that $44.8 million. The HUD funds are funds from the federal government and are collateralized by the city's community development block grant entitlements. Should these funds be used for an ineligible activity, repayment would be required from non-federal funds. The tenants of the project includes Costco and Best Buy, plus there is a 4,000 square foot of additional space available. There's a minimum of 898 surface parking spaces and improvements. There's also a Lowe's that will be adjacent to the project. It is not part of the project, but is on the project site. The total development costs are $106.7 million, and that includes the Lowe's development. Lowe's purchased the site from the developer, and Lowe's will be building its store independent of the city's public financing. In order to protect the city's investment in the project, there are several guarantees that have been agreed upon. The developer has agreed to full and immediate repayment of the Section 108 and Betty grant should for any reason project development be abandoned or delayed beyond reason 12 months from inception of the Section 108 loan. And Costco has agreed to open business to the public for 1 day with the stock staff store, Costco store, and make an accelerated repayment of up to 77% of the unamortized portion of the Section 108 loan if Costco closes the store and does not reopen business within a reasonable commercial timeframe. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, let me just ask, particularly in the area of safeguards, I can understand if they close, but what about, as there's a general feeling, up to 49%? If they don't close but they don't do well, is there flexibility to go beyond the 49%, or what's the safeguard if at 49% they do not meet their debt service?
At this point, the policy only allows to go up to 49%. We have the projection that includes the Lowe's revenues. If the information is provided from Office of Finance in an aggregate form to us, that the debt coverage ratio would be 1.48%. If for some reason they don't meet the debt service ratio, at this point, the community development block grant would be the backstop for any shortfalls.
So that would be block grant. All right, the other thing is that in one of the comments, it says that in dealing with block grant, if these funds are used for an ineligible activity, then it gets to the general fund, I would assume. What would be the type of ineligible activities that we'd be dealing with?
Well, HUD has an application that you have to put in for the project to get the Betty funds and the Section 108 loans. And so whatever is agreed upon in the application, in this case is capitalized interest, acquisition, and pre-construction costs, that HUD considers eligible, they would have to meet those. If for some reason something occurred and it was deemed later to be ineligible, that's when we would have to repay that money back.
But what is our safeguards that we're not going to have ineligible receipts in this project? Because that's the two liabilities for the general fund is the declaration that something's an ineligible activity, or they don't, or the 49% doesn't cover debt repayment. So those are the two concerns that I have.
Well, there is always a risk because these are estimates, and Kaiser Marston not prepared public revenue projections to show what these numbers would be. So there's always a risk that the revenues don't meet the projections and we fall short. And then CDD might want to come and speak to any other examples of when the project costs would be deemed ineligible.
So could you give us an idea on when they put that in there as kind of a red flag, what would be the type of ineligible activities and what's the safeguard to stay away from them?
My name is Ninus Benjamin from CDD. I do not believe there's a theoretical possibility, but in reality, the expected uses of funds is for the exact purposes that it was written in the application, and we believe there is no risk with that regard. It's just a mere theoretical possibility that HUD at some future of time might come and make a claim, but we have to defend it based on our supporting documents.
So CDD monitors that?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And then on the 49%, there's no ability to go above it.
It's a policy that requires us to use up to 49%. You would have to waive the policy in order to go above that.
And then you said the backdrop would be block grant.
Correct. At this point, if once the project is built and we have access to the revenues that come off that project, if it's short the amount that's needed to pay the debt service, then we would have to go to the block grant to make up the difference.
Could you explain, and I'm familiar because I worked at HUD on the 108s, but and the block grant and we can remember the bank that was created and some of the challenges with that. But it says there is a general fund impact of approximately 11.6 million principal and interest over 17 years for the 7.4 million Section 108 loan. So I thought this was all 108 and Betty money and all of that. So is there a general fund allocation that's already in our budget for this?
The way it works according to the site-specific tax revenue policy and procedure, the debt service is based on revenue that doesn't exist right now. So the project has to be built and we receive new revenues, which is the $44 million we anticipate over the 17-year period. On an annual basis, we anticipate getting $2 million. And from that new revenue, we can allocate up to 49% of that revenue to pay debt service, which is just approximately $1 million. And the project is is, at this point, is estimated to use $681,000 per year.
Of general fund or of their site-specific revenue?
The revenue is general fund money because it's revenue coming from the project itself. It would include sales tax or business license fees.
So it's general fund money we don't have now, that's the tax increment money that's coming in the future, in essence, because
Correct.
of the project. Okay.
It just seemed to me these risk factors seemed a little higher than normal as we look at these projects. From your point of view, is this an average project, or is there a little more risk attached to this than normal?
I think there's always a risk,
Always a risk.
from these projects because we're taking out initial loan off a line of credit before HUD goes to bonds. At this point, we're anticipating the bonds to be 3 years from now, and so we don't know what the interest rate would be at that time. So there's a risk that the interest rate could be higher than what we project. So there's also always risk in terms of sales data that we don't reach our anticipated projections and we fall somewhat short.
So the question I asked you, was this more risk than normal, though? I mean, we always assume some risk in these projects, but this one seemed like it had a little more risk than normal.
I think they're all these types of projects because the general fund revenue is coming into play on these types of projects. So that's why we have to be more careful when we analyze these. I don't, maybe CDD could answer in terms of the risk level among the projects, but I think we just wanted to note that there are risky factors in this project and bring it to your attention.
Yes, there are risk factors, but these risk factors are substantially mitigated. First of all, we are not talking about mom and pop type stores. These are national tenant, and Costco is very highly sought retailer by many cities, and the fact that they are opening at this time a store in Pacoima with so many foreclosures and all that, we are very appreciative that they are opening the store and other retailers going with them. There are risks that CAO mentioned as far as interest rates, but they are mitigated because from now that we will start the transaction until the transaction goes to a fixed rate, until then, if there is any shortfall in debt service payment, members of the borrowing entity are guaranteeing to replenish the reserve fund in sufficient amount to pay the debt service. Then the conversion prerequisite is SSTR from the project should be 1.2 times projected debt service at fixed rate. So it means SSTR should be established and supported and verified before we go to a fixed rate. So we have tried by design and structure of the financing, address those potential risks, and we are very comfortable to recommend this transaction.
Okay, and then the other risk issue is that we're using the CDBG as the background to fall to, yet what was our loss reduction in the last year to 17% on CDBG, something like that?
Yes, every year.
It's a declining fund lately. Now, that may change with the new administration. It may not. We don't know. But we've had a reducing amount of CDBG, and we've actually had to reduce programs and cut programs. So is that a good backstop to use in the case that the risk factors weren't right and that we have to fall back?
We have a very good coverage ratio in case, and the possibility of on this transaction that we have to tap on base CDBG allocation is very minimal. But that's a backstop for all Section 108 loans. But in this case, because of coverage ratio is so high, the chance of it is low. The risk is we go into 1.2 coverage ratio, convert to a fixed rate, and subsequent to that, we face some kind of recession and sales go down, SSTR comes low, then we have to tap CDBG. But if there is one transaction that we would recommend is this one. There are three national retailers, Costco, Best Buy, and Lowe's, contributing to SSTR. We could not find better than those. If there's one transaction we take those risks, is this one.
Okay. And also to add to that, in terms of all the projects that we use site-specific tax revenues, several years ago we had set aside $1 million from the Community Development Block Grant as a backstop to all of the projects that are funded this way. In the last several cycles, that money has been reprogrammed away, but we did have that as initial part of the policy, and so we have that available for any one of these types of projects that would fall into the situation where there might be a shortfall.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move that item.
That 18 and 19? Right? Okay.
We'll be concurring with the HCD report. And if we could ask information, if we can just highlight in the report those safeguards that were discussed regarding the general fund.
Next, we have item number 7, which is a city attorney report relative to an amendment in existing agreement with Downey Brand as outside counsel in the case entitled City of Los Angeles versus State Water Resources Control Board.
Good afternoon, Keith Pritzker, Deputy City Attorney. We're here to ask that the contract we've had with Downey Brand be extended for another 2 years and that $75,000 be added to that contract. I wanted to remind the council that $75,000 will not be coming from the city's general fund, but instead will, as has all the other funding for this litigation, come from the Bureau of Sanitation's Sewer Construction and Maintenance Fund.
Okay. Let me just ask 2 quick questions. This contract has lapsed about a year.
Yes.
So we can go back and add to it without going through another process?
Yes.
Okay, so even though it's lapsed.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So we're not adding a contract, we seem like, or would be creating a new contract?
Well,
it ended in, I'm sorry, Gus Dimbietti's Bureau of Sanitation. The contract ended September 23rd, 2007. The board had approved an extension. I guess through the process of trying to get this amendment through, there was some issues that arose in terms of getting it through council. But at this point, what we're asking to do is to take the 2 years would go from September 23rd to one that would be like, I guess, September 23rd, 2007 to September 23rd, 2009.
Are we paying for work in that period, or we just had a lapse and now we're saying let's start the contract up now with a lapse of this since 2007?
I believe we are paying for work that occurred during that period, and I think that we would probably have to do this as a new contract if that contract had lapsed.
What's unclear to me is whether we're paying for work between 2007 and to date, or is there a lapse of time and no work was done and we're saying let's start a new contract for work in the future?
Although I haven't seen the bills, and my colleague here from the Bureau of Sanitation may know the answer to that, I expect that this law firm probably has continued to represent the city even though it hasn't been paid after the expiration of that contract.
Because I'm just wondering if the 75 covers that lapse time.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
It would.
And are you going to come back to us for more money
No.
between now and 2009?
No.
So this will take us through the duration?
Yes.
So it covers the lapse time?
Yes.
And through the duration of this contract?
Right. We're trying to
not
bring-
contract, the duration of the case?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it was supposed to do, 75,000. We're trying to bring this to a formal close. It's been in the courts
So
for a
this will
long time.
take us to the closure?
This will take us to
Cover
the
the
closure.
lapse time?
Yes.
Okay, that's all right. Great.
I'm good.
Okay. Move with those, the clarification on item 7.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next is item number 14, which was continued from Budget and Finance meeting held on August 4, 2008, relative to authorizing the Executive Director of the Million Trees LA and the President of the Board of Public Works to accept donations on behalf of the city for the MTLA initiative. Per Budget and Finance instruction, CLA and CAO staff met with the Board of Public Works, and here they are to answer any questions you may have.
Let me ask, Mr. Smith had a number of questions, let him start it off from last week.
Well, I was just concerned about the appearance that Board of Public Works will be raising money for this when in fact they're giving out a lot of contracts to people and the appearance of impropriety. And so I just want to make sure that the Board of Public Works is just administering the money, not out there raising the money, not putting their rubber stamp on it while they're giving out contracts to people.
Craig Bloomquist, Director, Office of Accounting, Board of Public Works. And this motion would simply authorize the board president of the Board of Public Works and the executive director of the Million Tree Los Angeles Initiative to accept donations on behalf of the city, place them in the Public Works Trust Fund, and then expend them for the purpose of the Million Tree Los Angeles Initiative. To date, we have received amounts of money only from governmental agencies. We've received $2,525,000 in total, $1.4 million from DWP, $1 million from the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and $125,000 from the Port of Los Angeles. And we have expended approximately $74,000 to pay the Los Angeles Conservation Corps for tree planting and maintenance. But this motion would allow donations to be accepted from individuals and companies. These other amounts I mentioned were received by the city under memorandums of understanding with those government agencies.
So the answer is you're just going to be processing donations?
We're just processing what, excuse me?
You're just processing the donations? You're the,
That's
you're
correct.
the banker?
I'm the accountant.
Okay.
And so if when we get the donations, I put them in the city's financial records, and they go in the financial management information system, and when we get properly approved invoices under properly approved contracts, we make payments.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just curious who generates this money then? Who's providing the initiative to put money in this fund to do this?
Presumably, that would be coming from the executive director of the Million Tree Initiative Los Angeles.
Okay. Not from our end where we award any contracts to anybody.
Not to my knowledge.
Well, just so we make it clear enough that that isn't a responsibility of the city bureaucracy to be doing that kind of thing.
Let me ask you, how do you keep track of in-kind services?
Of the services that are performed under the Million Tree Initiative?
Not money, if it's just in-kind. Company comes and says, I'll plant 1,000 trees.
It's invoiced, of course, by the organization that's planting the trees, and that's approved through the approval
Do
process.
you accept that as a gift? Whatever that amount of time?
Oh, I see, for the planting of trees that...
They're not giving you money.
But just planting the trees. You know, I'm strictly concerned with the accounting and finance aspects of it, so I think that would have to come from the executive director of the Mayor's Million Tree
Do you have
Initiative.
accounting for that?
We're not specifically, but maybe, would you have a response on that, Suzanne?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Scheidecker-Cook with the Board of Public Works, and currently we're negotiating a contract, and it's been approved by the city attorney for in-kind services that include intellectual property for some artists have donated artwork. So we have a memorandum of understanding with each one of the artists that has done artwork and wants to donate the proceeds of that work or a portion of it, and this motion would cover gifts like that to the Million Tree Initiative.
Okay, but if somebody came to you and said, I'll use my resources to plant 5,000 trees at my cost, is that something that we take as in-kind, or is that something
We would, based on what Philip Land has, the discussions that we've had with him, that would come underneath like intellectual property or a specific contract. All the money that has come into the Public Works Trust Fund has been negotiated or done through a memorandum of understanding.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move item 14.
Thank you.
Next is item number 15, which was continued from the August 4, 2008 Budget and Finance meeting, which is the City Attorney Report and ordinance relative to amending sections of the Los Angeles Administrative Code to provide that all of the proceeds from the sales of city surplus property during fiscal year 08-09 be deposited into the general fund.
Okay. Before staff starts, let me ask, Mr. McQuiston has a card in on this.
He had
item.
to leave.
He's gone? Okay. We can start with staff reporting.
At your last meeting, there was a question about whether or not the ordinance submitted by the city attorney was accurately reflected what the council's action was. And since your last meeting, I was able to locate the exact language. And in fact, the city attorney did respond accurately to what the council's instruction was. However, your committee also asked the CLA's office to send notices to all the council offices indicating that what the ordinance did and the fact that the list of potential surplus properties, there was a large list that was discussed as part of the budget, but it's not, the list is not included in the ordinance. So we just made that clear through a letter that went out.
So the list that we discussed last time is just a potential list of
It was for
sales?
discussion purposes.
But the ordinance now is something that says all property that is actually sold during 0809 is treated differently than prior and then after this fiscal year.
It would.
Correct. It's treated differently during this fiscal year. Any sale that closes actually during this fiscal year, starting July 1 until June 30th, would be treated differently. 100% of that would go to the general fund, with the exceptions of those properties that are addressed separately and specifically by other parts of the code, including Potrero and including the Santa Monica Mountains properties and others. There's 3 or 4.
We also, just as a clarification, the property that's in the process and may get sold, but yet I believe the funding source of the original property came from Bunker Hill, and so there's a requirement that they get paid back.
The ordinance is qualified and says to the extent permitted by applicable law, so that if for example, bond properties are treated separately because of the legal requirements that apply to those as well. So that's taken care of.
My main issue was, I think, that there was not again, on anyone's error, so per se, that there wasn't full disclosure for all the council members. And so I just wanted to make sure that it is transparent, that when we're deciding this, that people understand, and some people may have seen the list, some people may have not seen the list, and so I want it to be transparent so they make a decision. I know that at the fire station, you know, I'm probably out of, between this year and next year, $6.5 million worth of sale, none of which, you know, is, and again, that's, I agree with 100% with this policy of it going, but I just want to make sure everyone else on the council understands that. That's what I mean.
Yeah, and I appreciate the clarity on the Venice surplus property and Potrero.
We're happy to do that, and I had not transmitted the new draft ordinance, awaiting to see if there were any other instructions today. So if there aren't, then I will provide that new draft ordinance to the clerk so that it could be transmitted to council after recess, I guess, for consideration after recess.
I just want to make sure, Lynn, that we're not projecting any dollar amount from this. There's no dollar amounts plugged into the budget for this. It's just.
There is.
No.
There's.
And it's predicated then on the previous list?
That's
so there was
what
20-something million dollars?
There was more than that amount on the entire list.
Yeah.
But that, I believe, is what the mayor used to come up with their estimate of 22.1
So to make
million.
budget, if there are items in there, like his item, her item, my item, that no longer are going to be on the list because of other actions,
Right.
Then the budget's off already.
Unless there are other properties that are
That come
sold
on.
that come up that we were unaware of.
Okay, so the only thing we're doing is approving the language of the ordinance, not the dollar amount or the project list.
Correct.
That's true.
It's just whatever ends up being sold this year goes under that new ordinance.
Yes.
And then we have to determine if the budget items in there, and maybe later this year, we need to take a good look at where we're at on some of these properties, but certainly they're not going to be worth as much as they were when the list was generated, for one. My fire station's already off the list because it's gone to Public Works for the Safe Center, so the list is already wrong. That's the bottom line. And the dollar amount's wrong.
Right, but the budget did include 22.1 million.
Okay.
That it's counted.
And what I said is somewhere during the year, we're going to have to take a good look at that because we may not and probably won't reach anywhere near that number, I would think. For one, just getting them on the market and sold in this fiscal year is going to be difficult, and they're not worth, they're already worth 40% less than they were. So that number is going to be very unrealistic. Okay.
Yeah, it might be likely.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move item 15.
Fix it.
We'll transmit the new ordinance.
Thanks.
Thank you. And with that, we'll adopt the ordinance.
Next is item number 16, which is a city attorney and CEO reports relative to the tobacco enforcement program. City staff are here to answer any questions you may have.
Let me, before staff comes, let me ask, we have about 6 cards. Robert Larley, Wes Ruderman, Monty Messick, Alicia Lopez. Tobacco.
They all get gold stars for sticking out 3 hours.
Thank you. Those I call, come up to the table.
My name is Robert Larley, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors for the Los Angeles County American Heart Association. And through our work, we have seen great success with the City of Los Angeles's tobacco retail licensing program. And I'm here today in person and have waited quite a while here to tell you that we can't stop here and that we need to continue to protect our children. And this increase that we're asking for, or asking for you to support the CAO's recommendation that we increase the licensing fee by $92. This will also allow the city to check an additional 200 retailers for compliance, basically giving and increasing the current compliance check from 700 to 900. And in the course of our work over the years and working with scores of municipalities, we found that these programs, this license program works, and it's the best and most effective way to prevent illegal sales of tobacco products to children. And I'd like to underscore that it's actually the only mechanism in place in order to provide that kind of compliance. This program also is a win-win to the city in the sense that this increase will bring the program into full compliance with full cost recovery. So on behalf of the American Heart Association, we applaud the city attorney's work in their tobacco enforcement programs, and we also appreciate the work that this council has done in protecting our children, and we hope that this increase, you'll support this increase and continue that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Councilmember Parks, committee members, my name is Monty Messick. I am the Deputy Director of the Los Angeles County Tobacco Control and Prevention Program. I applaud the city's leadership on tobacco control efforts over the years. As you may know, in December of last year, the Board of Supervisors adopted a tobacco retail licensing ordinance similar to the city's. My office is charged with implementing this program in the unincorporated areas of the county. Both the city's tobacco enforcement program and the county's tobacco retail licensing program are charged with the same objective: to ensure that adults who sell tobacco do so in a lawful manner and to protect our kids, Jurisdictions throughout the county, and for that matter throughout the state, have found that increased enforcement of tobacco law equals reduced illegal sales of tobacco products to minors. This has certainly been the case in the city of Los Angeles since your program was adopted.
Finish that sentence.
My time up?
Yeah,
Given,
if you have one thought on.
Okay. Given the city's number of retailers, it seems reasonable to increase the tobacco permit fee to fund more compliance checks. I also want to note that the proposed annual fee of $300 breaks down to 82 cents a day. This seems like a small price to pay to sell this harmful and deadly product. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Wes Ruderman. I'm the Director of Community Programs for Day One. We're a nonprofit organization that has worked with a number of communities on tobacco retail licensing. And the reason I'm here today is to really underline that the efficacy of these programs is contingent upon a funding level that is high enough to cover the cost of enforcement. If you look at a matrix of communities throughout Southern California that have existing TRL licenses, these types of ordinances, the mean is higher than what you currently have, and these are in cities with far fewer retailers. So I think it's very important that the funding is raised to a level at which you can do compliance checks at a high enough percentage of stores in order to really reduce the rate of illegal sales down to levels which other communities have been able to by greater enforcement. And for those reasons, I really urge the council to okay the increase.
Thank you very much. Before Alicia, if we can have Steve Gallegos and Janice Chow to come up.
May I ask the gentleman just spoke, you said we're below the mean of other cities that have these ordinances. Would this bring us up to the mean?
I think I don't know those numbers offhand. These certainly could be provided, but it would certainly bring you closer. I mean, it ranges anywhere from very small cities with like 10 retailers, maybe $50 to like $600. And I know there are a couple other people who actually work in some of those communities who are here and can speak to that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Parks and committee members, my name is Janice Chow with the American Cancer Society. The American Cancer Society supports the CAO's recommendation to establish a $300 tobacco permit fee and to increase the number of compliance checks. Every day, more than 2,000 youth will try smoking and get hooked on tobacco. And according to the Centers for Disease Control, 80% of adult tobacco users start smoking as teens, and 35% of those users become hooked and are daily smokers by the age of 18. Nicotine use in kids typically lead to a lifelong addiction in tobacco, with roughly 1/3 of all youth smokers eventually dying prematurely from smoking-related diseases. Cigarette smoking can cause significant health problems in children, causing shortness of breath, reduced physical activity, respiratory illnesses, and poor lung growth and function. Smoking is also the #1 cause of preventable cancer death and the second leading cause of cancer death in both men and women. A tobacco permit fee is a proven method of reducing youth access to tobacco products. The fee increase will support an adequate number of compliance checks and administrative expenses to ensure that a strong program is in place. Just one more comment. A strong program will lead to significant decrease in tobacco use, preventing thousands of tobacco-related cancer deaths. That's it. Thank you.
Alicia?
Good evening, Councilmember Parks and fellow committee members. My name is Alicia Lopez, and I'm the chair for the Coalition for a Tobacco-Free Los Angeles County, which is comprised of over 70 agencies consisting of various community-based organizations and nonprofit agencies. I am here today on behalf of the Coalition to voice support for item number 16 on the agenda, a report from CAO relative to the increase in the tobacco permit fee and number of compliance checks. The Coalition encourages strong tobacco retail licensing ordinances and recognizes that communities that have adopted such ordinances have seen dramatic drops in their illegal sales of tobacco to minors rates. The LA City Attorney's Tobacco Enforcement Program is able to conduct 700 undercover minor decoy compliance checks throughout the city annually, and the Coalition recognizes the importance of increased compliance checks to ensure reduction of youth access to tobacco products, since the number of checks is disproportionate to the number of tobacco retail stores in each council district. I just have one more closing phrase. Again, the Coalition supports the CAO's report and looks forward to a healthier Los Angeles, free from easy access to tobacco products for our youth. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Steve?
Good afternoon, Chairman Parks and honorable members of the Los Angeles City Council. My name is Stephen Gallegos. I am the Program and Smoke-Free Advocacy Director for the American Lung Association of California. The American Lung Association is a longtime partner with the City of Los Angeles since the inception of a tobacco retail licensing program instituted by then City Attorney James Hahn. I was there. The tobacco retail licensing program was started at no cost to retailers because the city funded it with Mangini versus Tobacco Industry Award funds. The intent was to reduce smoking by youth, holding retailers accountable for their sales of tobacco products to kids, a sales rate that today is almost 30%, down from 42% when we started. We know that well-funded tobacco retail licensing programs with adequate enforcement bring down the rates of tobacco product sales to minors and are proven effective. Over 53 cities in California have one. The City of Los Angeles set a fee to the permits to bring value that retailers would respect and protect and pay for a program that it covered at no cost. The American Lung Association of California asks you to support the CEO's recommendation of a proposed fee of $300, a fee that would provide full cost recovery for LA's tobacco retail licensing program. Long Beach is set at $442, Inglewood $350, and the cities of Carson and Compton are both at $500. We thank the city attorney and the staff of the Tobacco Enforcement Program for its prosecution of violators still preying on the vulnerability of children, and ask that you keep to the target of increasing the compliance checks from 900 to 1,200 per year, a policy that this committee and the council adopted 2 years ago. That can be accomplished by using tobacco settlement money coming to the city, $25 million coming in the next 25 years. The City of Los Angeles is a leader for health in its protection of children with this tobacco enforcement program, and through our council's vision and votes and support, you instituted this program first. Now we need your continued support and funding to make this program last. Thank you.
No, I'm 100% behind you.
You had me at hello, but you can never do enough, I don't think. If I could just, it's late in the afternoon, but I can give you a really cute story because I think it's funny and it's cute. I just flew back from Chicago and landed at San Francisco Airport. And the pilot came on and said, welcome to San Francisco Airport. The time is so-and-so, the weather is so-and-so, the wind is so-and-so. You may now turn on your telephones, and if you wish to smoke, wait till you leave California. But needless to say, the plane erupted in laughter and applause. So.
No. Okay. Thank you. We'll move the
Thank you.
CAO recommendations.
Yes. Okay. One more.
One more?
Yes.
What is that?
17.
17? All right.
We have one more.
You got one more item?
Yeah, 17.
Oh,
There's
come on, I gotta go. I got a meeting.
the CRA.
What is that?
All right. Last is item number 17, which is a CRA and joint CAO-CLA reports and resolution relative to a request for authorization to negotiate and execute agreements with the Department of Transportation and Department of Public Works to partially fund the construction of a city-owned public parking facility at 1627 North Vine Street.
It was my question, I just asked, I thought we swept the SPRF money in the budget this year, at the end, didn't we just sweep all that money? So where's their $15 million coming from for in the SPRF fund?
Janice Chang, Office of the CAO. In previous years, $10.2 million has already been set aside for the Vine Street project. There was an indication that additional funding was needed, previously set aside for the Vine Street project, and so in the 08-09 budget, funding was set aside in the projects to be designated account in case the Vine Street project did need some funding. So there was a certain amount of money that was kept in the SPRF for that, and there is $5 million available to be added to that project.
Okay, so it wasn't swept is the answer.
Right.
This was preserved and not swept in. It was only 10, okay. All right.
Let me just ask, any consideration where the 1.8 may come from on the gap?
Could I ask that question offline?
Good afternoon, Zena Huang, Office of CAO. Other potential funding sources could be from CRA or from the SPRF.
CRA and what else?
The additional from SPRF.
So that would be the first two choices?
Yes.
The issue of general fund, is that in the consideration?
That's also in consideration. However, we'll be working with the CLA's office in evaluating where the funds should be identified from.
And then what would be the timing if these additional gap funds are needed?
Well, we can report back to you within 60 days once we come to a determination.
Okay, 60 days.
So we won't go forward until we've identified those additional funds?
Well, the project, the construction timeline of the project can go forward upon this approval of recommendations. However, we can be working concurrently on getting these funding sources identified.
So if we move forward on the CAO-CLA recommendations, but a report back in 60 days on the 1.8 potential sources for the 1.8 gap?
Yes.
Okay. So we're done. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of loose. That's kind of loose, isn't it?
You know what they did? That was part of that when we did the